this is Michaela, and you're listening to Tank Talk, hosted by my favorite fish guy, John Hudson from KGTropicals.
Thank you, Michaela. Welcome, folks, to another episode of Tank Talk presented by KGTropicals, Universal Rocks, and DustinsFishTanks.com. I am your host, John Hudson from KGTropicals. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I hope you're having a great day. It is bright and sunny here in King George, Virginia. Thank God. It was freezing in a ice storm last week, so it's wonderful to see a nice day out there today, and I hope it's a beautiful day for you too. If you have any questions or comments that you would like addressed on this show, email me at tanktalkfeedback@gmail.com. This is a show that is all about helping you progress in the fish keeping hobby, so don't be shy. Doesn't matter if your questions are beginner questions or even some of the more advanced questions, send them in today. You never know when you might see me or hear me address them. In today's show, we're going to have a lot of fun because we're going to talk all about the discus fish, one of the most popular fish in the hobby, without a doubt. The idea for this came in from Robert McGowan. He sent in this email to tanktalkfeedback@gmail.com. I'll read the email and then we will talk all about this gorgeous fish. There's tons of information out there about them. I've done videos about them. The content about discus is endless out there, but we're going to have some fun with it because it's one of my favorite fish for sure, and something that I do plan to add into the studio here sooner or later. Okay, today we are talking all about discus. The idea came to me from my friend Robert McGowan. He sent me an email that says, "Hi, John. I love all the content that you put out, and I've just been listening to the podcast that you recently uploaded to YouTube, and I thought it would be a great idea if you could do a podcast on how to keep discus, as I know you've already done a video." Yes, I did do multiple videos, including a handful of videos that I did with my friend Discus Hans up in Baltimore. We're going to talk more about him. Believe me, one of the most renowned names in discus today. We're going to talk about him, and we're going to talk about that time that I spent up there with him. The videos that I put out there with Hans are a great resource if you want to know about these fish. Not just trying to hype up my own videos here, but if you haven't seen those, you might want to check them out. I did like a 4-part interview with Hans. We talked about everything about discus, so you definitely might want to check that out. So I'm going to present this for the beginner. We're going to talk about discus from the beginner, so that if you've never had them, but you're, wanting them, or you're scared of them, or whatever it is, we're going to try to open your eyes about these fish and make it so that they're not quite so scary. Because to be honest with you folks, if you can keep fish in a glass box, you can keep discus. They're really not as difficult as a lot of people might think. And we're going to talk about why that is in a little bit. But let's talk about where they originally came from. They originally came from the Amazon. That's all you really need to know. It's one of the biggest rivers in the world, if not the biggest. I always thought the Nile was the biggest, but who knows? I was absent the day they taught rivers in high school. But they come out of the Amazon in South America, and the wild-caught discus, that they're not the discus that you are thinking of. And what I mean by that is, when you think about discus, you're thinking of these beautiful reds and blues and stripes and all different kinds of patterns and things like that. That's not what you're going to find with wild-caught discus. Of course, they're beautiful fish, but they're nothing like what you're expecting. They're mostly green, blue, brown. They're not as vibrant as you might expect. The reason why you see all of these fish out there now with these vibrant colors and striking patterns is because they have been developed over decades by these farms, by big-name breeders like Stenker and Watley, and there's plenty more out there, trust me. The big names in discus that have developed these fish and developed them for certain purposes, whether they be a pattern or color variations or whatever. So that's what you see today when you think about discus. Wild-caught discus are actually very rare. I've never seen one for sale in a store. And I think if you saw them, just the only reason I know this is because I've seen plenty of videos and I've talked to plenty of people. I know that if you saw a wild-caught discus in a store, you would probably be disappointed because they're not what you expect. The fish looks the same, but the colors are nothing like what you would expect to see. So more of kind of a drab color, to be honest with you. Angels are very similar. If you've ever seen wild angels, first of all, they're massive. I mean, bigger than your hand, which is crazy. But the colors are not what you expect when you think of the angel in the home aquarium. Now, angels are not known for their colors like discus are anyway, but all I'm getting at is it's a big difference between what you would see in the wild and what you see in people's aquariums. And that is because these breeders, these big names, have gone out there and they've developed them into what we know today. They've made them one of the most popular aquarium fish because of their bright colors. They get pretty big. I mean, if you get a pretty big one, it can be the size of like an IHOP pancake. I mean, they get 7 inches or so. They can get really big, some bigger than others. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but they get big. They're very peaceful. They're very graceful. They're absolutely gorgeous. You cannot deny these fish. That's why they're so popular. So that popularity comes at a cost, though, and that's another thing that we're going to talk about here in a minute. But one of the things that you automatically think of if you've never kept a discus, if you're talking to somebody about them or anything like that, one of the first things that you think about is, oh, discus are so hard to keep. They're so fragile. They're fragile little flowers, and they're almost impossible to keep. You have to be an advanced fish keeper in order to keep discus. Well, first of all, what is the definition of an advanced fish keeper? Is that just somebody that has been keeping fish for more than a year? I don't even understand these days what the definition of an advanced fish keeper is. Bottom line is this: the information's out there. 20-something years ago when I started keeping fish, you had to pretty much learn on your own, or you had to know an old guy down the street that could teach you about fish. The information wasn't as readily available as it is right now. You had to get your info from a book or something like that, which never worked well for me. Now you can literally search online. You can find all of this information. You can become an expert in fish keeping pretty quickly because of the amount of information that's out there. So I don't even know what the definition of an advanced fish keeper is anymore. But that's what people automatically think when it comes to discus, is you have to be this advanced hobbyist. You really have to know what you're doing, because if you don't, you're going to kill them all. Okay. First of all, you do need to know what you're doing. Okay. I would not recommend discus for somebody that doesn't know the difference between a goldfish and a frontosa. Okay. I mean, you do need to know how to keep an aquarium. You need to know how to keep the water clean. It would be nice if you understood the process of keeping water clean, what keeps it clean, how to maintain a healthy balance in your aquarium. It would be nice for you to understand all of that stuff. And like I said earlier, it doesn't take long to figure that out. It is science, but it's not rocket science. It's not hard to figure it out. So if you're someone who understands how to keep an aquarium, you know how to keep one clean, you know how to keep fish happy and healthy, you can keep discus. There is no certain amount of time that you need to have been keeping fish in order for you to qualify as someone that can keep discus. That's ridiculous. You absolutely do not. And the reason for this is because of the way these fish have been bred. You see, discus developed their reputation because of the way they were when they first started in this hobby. They were very, very close to wild caught. Here's what I mean by that. If you just heard that crazy noise, that was my dog upstairs. What I mean by that is you have fish pulled from the Amazon and they're put into a farm. Those fish breed, you have babies. Take those babies and you're breeding a bunch of different pairs, and you take these babies and you put some together and you make more breeding pairs, and you have generations. 3 decades ago, the generations that were out on the market were not very many generations away from the fish that had been pulled straight from the river. The fish that are pulled straight from the river are indeed very, very finicky and very fragile. And so when you're only a couple of generations away from that, the fish that you have are also going to be pretty fragile, delicate little flowers, if you will. But the farther you get away from that, the more the fish evolves, the more they adapt to what they're being bred in. And I know here in the States and in Germany where Stenker are bred, these fish are bred in water from the tap. And so the fish have no choice but to adapt to that water from the tap. And so what you have is fish that were bred real close to wild caught, 3 decades ago. Those fish, you had to really be on point, and you really did need to be an expert to keep discus back then, because your water had to be perfect. And when I say perfect, I don't mean it just had to be clean, but the parameters had to be perfect. Very, very low mineral content. It had to be very soft. We're talking about a pH of like 5.2. I mean, very soft water, almost required using things like reverse osmosis water, which I don't even know if that was out back then. I don't even know what they did back then. I was a kid. It doesn't matter. But I'm saying the water had to be perfect. It not only clean, but set up perfectly for those fish. Otherwise, they wouldn't make it. This is where the reputation for discus came from. Now, these fish are bred in controlled environments. Most of these breeders are breeding fish in tap water. And so they've adapted. They are much hardier, and they can tolerate a much broader parameter than what you're used to. Now, there's going to be people that are going to argue with me on this, and that's fine. I've said it a million times. We can disagree, and we can still be friends. There are some strains of discus, some from particular places, particularly Asia, where the discus are a little bit more fragile than discus bred in the U.S. or bred in Europe. It's just a fact. I can't explain it. I don't know. But this is from my years of talking to people about discus, and I've had plenty of discus in my day too. That's what I've learned, is that the Asian discus are a little bit more delicate than the European or American discus. And when I say European American, I'm just talking about where they were bred. And the reason for this is because of the water that they have when they're breeding them over in Asia. I'm not saying the Asians don't know what they're doing and they're breeding a bad fish. No, I'm not saying that at all. A lot of the fish that you see in pet stores are from Asia. I mean, it is what it is. They're a huge exporter of aquarium fish. Discus are no different. You go to your local pet store, unless they specify to you exactly where their discus came from, they probably came from Asia. And from what I understand, and from what I've experienced, they are a little bit more fragile than those that are bred in Europe and America. So I would recommend to somebody, if you are going to get into discus for the first time, that's the route you might want to take, is American bred or European bred discus. Now, it comes at a cost. They are a little bit more expensive. Anything made in America is going to be more expensive than something made in China or Japan or Taiwan. It just is what it is. You do have to pay a little bit more money, but I think you will have less headaches. Now, there's probably going to be a lot of discus fanatics that are listening to this right now. And please understand, I am not making this argument that Asian discus are bad and European discus are the best and all of this. I have my personal opinions, but I'm not playing that game. That's not what this is all about. All I am stating here is my personal experience. And my personal experience is the fish bred in Europe are a little easier to take care of than those bred in Asia. That's all I'm saying. I don't care what your opinion is on it. If you think the other way, that's fine. But, we can have that argument about a lot of different things. There's no reason to argue about it when it comes to fish. So let's move on. Let's move on from that. But I do want to read to you one thing, or I want to talk about one thing here for a second, because when I went up to Discus Hans, he's somebody that I know very well, and we worked with him professionally for quite a while, and then we stopped carrying discus. And there's a long story for that. It had nothing to do with the fish, but we converted our shop to strictly carrying nothing but African cichlids, and so obviously discus didn't fit into that. So we stopped buying fish from him, but we have kept in contact, and I still consider Hans to be a friend. So when I went up there to interview him, we're going to talk. I want to read you one of his answers from one of the first questions that I asked of him. But before I do that, I wanted to fill you in a little bit about who Hans is. Hans came over here from Holland, and he is the exclusive U.S. distributor of Stenker Discus. They're bred in Germany. And in my opinion, I'm not saying this because Hans is a friend of mine. It's not just some personal bias here. In my opinion, the Stenker Discus are the easiest fish to keep of the discus fish that are out there. That's just my opinion. Again, there's no bias here. I'm talking about years of experience with these fish. I have found them to be the easiest. And there's a reason why Hans is as successful as he is and why Stenker is as successful as they are, is because a lot of people know that. They know that the fish are hardier, they're easier to keep, and some would argue that Stenker Discus grow larger than Asian Discus. But again, I think there's literally been bloodshed on the argument of European versus Asian Discus. Okay, I'm not trying to get into all of that. All I'm telling you is I believe European Discus are the easiest to keep, particularly Stenker. But it's one of the first things that everybody talks about when you bring up Discus. Oh, they're hard to keep. And so I asked Hans when I first started interviewing him, everybody thinks Discus are really hard to keep. What is your response to that? And he had a great quote when he answered it. And I want to read it to you. And I'm going to paraphrase it a little bit, but I'm basically reading word for word what his response was. And you can go to my video, youtube.com/KGTropicals, search down for interview with Discus Hans part 1. And you'll see this is the first question that I asked him. And so his response was this: Discus aren't hard to keep, but Discus are expensive. All fish are more or less hard to keep. You have to do your water changes and you have to feed your fish. The point is, Discus cost more. If people lose one Discus, then all of a sudden Discus are really hard to keep. People kill every day in the U.S. over 100,000 cardinal tetras. But no one has ever said cardinals are hard to keep because it's a cheaper fish. Discus are just like any other fish. Keep your water clean, feed them well, and they're easy. Now that is a quote from Discus Hans. Okay, watch the video. You'll see. I changed it up a little bit. You know, Discus Hans, he's a smarter man than me. He even knows English better than me. But he talks a little different. He's from Holland. He's got the accent. He says things in a different order than we would. But that is the gist of what he said. And it's very true. If you go out and you buy a $50 fish, which is, you know, you'd probably be buying a 3-inch Discus. You buy a $50 fish and you take it home and 2 weeks later it dies. You are devastated because you're, oh, I spent $50 and this thing is now going down the sewage pipe. If you buy a $3 Cardinal Tetra, or you come across the specials that the big box stores do where they sell them to you for $1 a piece, if one of those fish dies, you're like, oh well, I feel sad for the fish, but no big deal. It's not that way when it comes to Discus. Even if you're buying a fish that costs $10, you're not going to be as heartbroken and you're not going to feel it as much as you would if it was a $50 Discus. Forget about it when we're talking about bigger ones. When you get into Discus that are 5 and 6 inches when you buy them, you're going to spend big money on those fish. So it hurts if they die. And automatically they get this reputation of, oh, they're hard to keep. Because you now have the stigma attached to the fish because you lost money with those fish. Hans is exactly right when he says that. And like he said, people kill cardinal tetras all day long. There is no documentation that over 100,000 die a day. But that was just his example of people kill cardinal tetras all day long every day. But no one has ever labeled them as hard to keep. So Discus, they're not for the entry-level person that has only ever kept betas and doesn't understand anything to do with keeping clean water and all that. They're not for the absolute beginner, but you don't have to be a supreme expert to keep them either. So let's hopefully move past that. let's move past them being so difficult to keep. Hopefully now you believe me when I tell you that they are a challenge just like any other fish, but they're not as difficult to keep as you might think. And so with that in mind and with Hans's quotes in mind, let's move on. I want to share with you a couple of words about my good friends down there in Texas, and then we're going to move on and get into some of the nuts and bolts about these fish. All right, folks, you know you're sick of looking at the same old boring tank. It's time to spice things up a bit. It is time for an overhaul. That means it's time for you to visit universalrocks.com. Universal Rocks has some of the most amazing products to completely transform the look of your aquarium. Whether you're looking for decorative rocks, tree trunks, or an incredible 3D background, Universal Rocks has everything you need to take your tank from dull and boring to a gorgeous masterpiece. See for yourself. Head over to universalrocks.com to see all the unbelievable products they have to offer. And when you're ready to order, type Tank Talk in the promo box at checkout for a 15% discount just for being a listener to this program. What are you waiting for? Check out universalrocks.com today. Universal Rocks, so real, so light, so easy. Okay, so let's take a minute here to talk about why Discus are so daggone expensive. It should be common sense, but we're going to talk about it a little bit here because it's a question I get a lot. Why are they so expensive? Now, first of all, expensive is, we all make our own definition for expensive, but you can find Discus for anywhere from $30 a piece for very small to $300 or even more a piece for the larger ones. It's all going to depend on where you buy them. It's going to depend on who bred them, who raised them. If you buy them direct from a breeder, you might be able to get a little better deal on them. Who knows? But the cost difference between different suppliers is vast. And so you just have to know where they're coming from and know that there is a big difference in cost. And most of the cost is going to be dependent on the size of the fish. And this should be common sense. Discus are a lot of work. And so if you have a fish that's 4 inches in size, obviously wherever that fish came from, they've been working hard for a long time, probably even a year, to raise the fish to that size. And so they've put a lot of food, a lot of labor, a lot of water changes, and all different things in there to grow that fish to that size. This would be why they're so expensive. You buy one that's 2 inches in size, it's much younger. The breeder has not had to take as long to raise them up to that point, and so they're going to be cheaper. It's natural. The bigger you get, the more money you're going to pay. And so, again, size and then where you buy them from is going to be your biggest difference. It's no different than dogs. You can buy a dog at the pound and only pay a little small adoption fee. You can take a step up and buy one from a pet store. The pet store has to make a profit, so you're going to pay considerably more for that fish. You might think that you're going to spend less money by going direct to the breeder, but the breeders know that they're breeding a really good product. You, the consumer, are going to be able to come there and see the facility and all of that kind of stuff. And so they can charge a premium for that, for the way the dogs were raised, and so on and so on. The more popular the breeder, the more well-known the breeder, the more awards and accolades the breeder has, the higher the price goes up. Fish are no different. If you're going to buy a fish from a breeder who is one of the more well-known breeders out there, you're going to pay a good amount of money. And you know what? It's worth it because of the way that they were raised and because of the bloodline of those fish. So the cost is something that scares a lot of people away. Like we talked about in the beginning, you have a fish that you paid $150 for him. If it dies, that's going to hurt a lot. So the price of Discus is something that scares a lot of people away, but you can find them cheaper. Just understand that they are going to be smaller, and also understand that most of the work with Discus is when they're small, because to grow at the fastest rate possible, they need to have very clean water and they need to be fed a lot. If they're being fed a lot, it's going to contaminate the water because that food is going to process in the fish and then it's going to come out the other end contaminating the water. And so the more you feed them, the more water changes you have to do. It's a lot of work. So you save money by buying them smaller. You save money up front, but you're going to be putting in a lot of work and a lot of food and a lot of this and a lot of that to get them to that 4-inch size. So just let that play a role in your decision of what size to buy. Also, this is something that I talked with Hans about. The larger the fish, the easier they are to take care of. Now, this might seem like common sense because you think, well, they're more adults. Adults are going to be healthier and not as fragile. And that's true, but also has a lot to do with the amount of work involved. If you have, like I said a couple of seconds ago, I don't want to repeat myself, but if you have a 2-inch fish, you need to be doing a lot of water changes. You need to be doing a lot of feedings to get that fish to grow at the fastest rate possible to get up to that 4 inches and then continue to grow to the 5, 6, 7 inches. So smaller fish, less money up front, but more work. Larger fish, more money up front, but less work and much harder, easier to take care of. Now, don't get me wrong. It's not like if you buy a 4 or a 5-inch fish, you never have to do any maintenance. No, that would be ridiculous. You certainly do still have to take care of the water and keep the water clean, do your water changes, but maybe not quite as much. You don't need to feed a 4 or 5-inch Discus 4 or 5 times a day. You can get away with once or twice a day and they'll be fine. So let's talk about tank size. This is something that we always have to talk about when we're talking about specific species. Tank size, I'm going to do exactly like I do for every other fish that I talk about. Bigger is always better. These fish get big. I would tell you 75 gallons or higher. Now, do you have a 55-gallon tank already? And do you want to buy Discus? You'll be fine. But me, I'm one of those people that just always believes that you should have them in as big a tank as possible. I've got an Oscar in a 65-gallon tank right now. I feel so guilty. I feel like he needs to be in something a lot bigger. I mean, bigger is always better. It's better for the fish. It's easier to take care of. Everything works easier when you have them in a bigger tank. So if you're setting this up for the first time, you're going to go out and get a tank specifically for your Discus. How about getting a 75-gallon or bigger for your Discus? But again, 55, you'd be fine. Now, here's one of the things that I get from a lot of people. They say, but wait a minute, John, I've seen Discus on videos. Even your videos with Hans, I've seen full-grown Discus in 20-gallon tanks. So why do I need to have a 75-gallon tank to keep my Discus? Okay, there's an easy reason for that. The reason why you see a large pair of Discus in a 20-gallon tank is because that's what the breeders do. First of all, the fish were not raised in that size tank. They would have never grown to that size if they were raised in a 20-gallon tank. They're raised in a large tank, paired off. We're going to talk more about this in a minute. Paired off and then placed into a 20-gallon tank for breeding purposes. Now, the reason why they do this is because it keeps the couple close together. It keeps them focusing on what they need to do, and they're not going to run off from each other. Also, we're going to talk about this more in the breeding part, but when they breed, it's better to have the fry in a small tank with the breeding pair so that the fry don't swim off and go too far away. Okay? So that's why you might see fish, large Discus, in a 20-gallon tank. And this goes back to something we talked about in a past episode where I said a lot of people are misled by seeing fish in a pet store in a 20-gallon tank, and they think that that's okay. It's not okay. They need to be in a much larger tank than that, unless you are someone who's breeding them. Then you can put them in a 20. So, wrap it all up. 75-gallon tank, and you should be good to go. Now, filtration and other mechanical things, the tank is going to need to be in the neighborhood of 84 to 86 degrees for Discus. It doesn't have to be, but that is absolutely ideal. The warmer you go, the less chances you have of things like ick and other types of diseases that the fish can contract. You want to keep your expensive fish safe. I would go 84 at least, but if you can go higher than that, then that's fine. The videos that I did with Hans, his shop is like a sauna. It's ridiculous, and you don't even want to know what he pays for his gas bill every month in the wintertime. It's obscene. The man could live in a mansion if he didn't have to buy as much gas as he has to buy every single month. But he does that because he wants to keep his shop at 86 degrees year round. This is why Hans is not a very big man. He's very tall, but he's not a fat guy at all because he's in this hot environment all day long. And that man works hard, believe me. So, but he wants to keep the temperature at 86 degrees because for the most part, ick has a hard time surviving at higher temperatures. It's not going to make it above 86 degrees. And so he wants to keep everything safe. He wants to keep the fish happy and disease free. So he keeps it up at 86 degrees. It is a bit extreme, but I would tell you at least 84. So if you have a heater already and you have your 75-gallon tank, if your little heater isn't going to be able to get you up to 86 degrees without making your power meter spin around so fast that it smokes, you might want to get another heavy-duty heater to add to it so that the two can work together and get your temperature up to a minimum of 84. If you can only get it up to 82, they're fine. I mean, your discus aren't going to die if they're at 82 degrees. They'll be perfectly fine. But just like tank size, bigger is always better. Temperature, higher is always better. Now, don't get carried away and put it up to 94 degrees and all that. Don't cook your fish, for crying out loud. But if you can get it to 84 to 86, that would be absolutely ideal. And that is straight out of Hans's mouth. And Jörg Stenker, who is the owner of Stenker Discus, would tell you the same thing. So, but filtration, you want your tank to be well filtered. Discus do not like an intense amount of current. They're very, I don't want to call them lazy fish, but they're not the most active fish in the world. They're not like your Mbunas or your African cichlids that are going to be constantly back and forth, nonstop, always moving. Discus aren't that way. They do move around, but you will see them a lot just kind of hanging out in one spot, and they might not move for an hour. If they have a current pushing them around, then it might stress them out, and you certainly don't want that. So you want a good current in the tank to be able to filter the water properly, but you don't want the current to be so strong that it's pushing them around. Now, what if you have something like an FX6 or an FX5 and you want to use that on your 75-gallon? That's beautiful. I mean, that's way more filtration than you need. But if you want to use that, you might look at it and say, but the output on that filter is so strong, it's going to blow my discus around. That's true. Go online and learn. You can just do a search for it. It's easy enough. And find ways of making a spray bar for a fluval filter. It's made out of PVC pipe. It's very simple to do. And you plug it into your fluval. And what it does is it disperses that current and spreads it out so that it's not all focused on one area coming out really, really strong. And it'll make it a lot easier for your fish that don't want an extreme amount of current. So good filtration. I always tell people, I don't care what kind of fish you're keeping, double filter your tank. If you have a 75-gallon tank, filter it as if it's a 150-gallon. Yes, it's extreme, but it will make your life easier. And make sure you have heat in the tank. Make sure your heaters are strong enough to keep it up there around 84 or so, and you should be fine. Now, decorating your tank and your discus tank, this is where people can go absolutely crazy, and it's a lot of fun because discus do extremely well with live plants. Now, this is another thing that is straight from Hans's mouth, and it makes a lot of sense. If you're going to have your discus in a tank with live plants, you may want to wait to get your live plants until your discus are larger, not full grown, but larger. Or if you haven't bought your discus yet and you already have the live plants, you might want to go ahead and get your discus larger. Reason being, the smaller ones, like we talked about, you're going to be feeding them a lot. You're going to be having to do a lot of water changes. And we all know that lots of water changes are not the best for your live plants. So if you get your discus larger, you're not going to have to do as many water changes. It'll be easier for the plants. Now, plants are a beautiful thing. Live plants will help with controlling nitrates and things like that. And the discus love to swim through them and all of that kind of stuff. So live plants go extremely well with discus. If you don't want to do the live plant thing, you can do fake plants. A lot of those fake plants out there look very much like real plants. Things like driftwood and stuff like that work very well with discus. So go ahead and throw your driftwood in there. And what you don't want to do is decorate it really heavy with a lot of rocks like you would for your African cichlids and stuff like that. You don't want these fish swimming through and getting scuffed up or anything like that. Plus, a lot of the rocks out there will raise your pH really high. You don't want that for your discus either. So we're going to talk a little bit more about pH as we go. But, you know, stay away from a lot of rocks. You can have some rocks in there if you want to use them to be artistic and stuff like that. But stay away from a ton of rocks. Instead, use driftwood and plants, and it'll be a drop-dead gorgeous tank. Believe me. Now, as far as your water parameters go, this is where the big debate starts. Because like I said, if you have fish that are close to wild caught, they like an extremely soft water, very low pH, almost like you have to use RO water, reverse osmosis water, in order to keep these discus. It's really not that critical anymore because, like I said, so many of these farms, even the Asian farms, are using, I mean, they're so far from wild caught and they're raising their fish in tap water that it's usually not as big a concern. If you have water that's close to neutral as far as pH goes, you should be fine. Now, with Stenker discus, with Discus Hans up in Baltimore, I've done the test. I've used the meters. I've looked at it right there in Hans's facility. He has the digital meters. His pH in his entire facility is at a 7.6. And I know if you had talked to me a long time ago before I knew Hans, I would have told you were nuts if you kept discus in a pH of 7.6, because I was always told it had to be 6 or 5.8. It had to be very, very low to keep discus. And so when you see it at 7.6, you're like, how in the world is he doing this? These fish are magic. No, it's because over the years, they have adapted to the different water parameters. They've adapted to tap water in Germany. So this is something that works out beautifully for you and I because it makes it much easier to keep these fish. You don't have to go and buy an expensive osmosis system or anything like that. You can just take water straight out of the tap, make sure you dechlorinate it, make sure it's good and clean, stick it in there, and your fish will absolutely thrive. So to wrap it up, we're not wrapping up the whole thing here, but to wrap up the equipment side, what you're going to need, part of this conversation, 75 gallons or higher. You can get away with 55, but let's go 55 and be done with it. Heat, make sure you have enough heaters in there or a strong enough heater, maybe a heater stronger than what you actually need to get the water up to a temperature of 84 to 86 would be perfect. If it can't be quite that high, you're fine. But get it up there as much as you can. The current in your tank should not be extreme. You need current to be able to filter the water, of course, but you don't want it to be blowing your fish around. Over-filter your tank, but try to keep the current down so that you're not blowing them around. And then when it comes to decorating, substrate, you can use whatever you want. You can decorate with live plants. The discus absolutely love it. You can throw yourself some driftwood in there, decorate it all up. They will love it. It will be gorgeous. You won't be sorry. Try to stay away from a ton of rock formations and stuff like that in your tank. And then buy your discus, put them in there, and enjoy them. So, all right, let's talk about diet for a little bit, and then we're going to talk about breeding. So one of the nice things about fish keeping these days is that they have made the whole science behind feeding your fish very simple, because they're manufacturing some of the best foods nowadays that have everything in them for your fish. But sometimes people are not satisfied with that and they want to make their own food for their fish. Nothing wrong with that. It's kind of fun. If you are into that kind of thing, you can mix up all different kinds of stuff. Beef heart and tilapia and things like that you can, and shrimp, that you can mix all up for your discus. That's great. But me, I'm all about simplicity. Even if I only have one tank that I'm taking care of, I like it to be as simple as possible. So for me with discus, I would be going out and buying some of those high quality discus pellets and discus flakes that are out there. Yes, it's true. There are companies out there, and I'm not going to talk about any in particular, but there are companies out there manufacturing food specific to the discus's diet. So it's a quick search online or a quick trip to your local aquarium store. You will find good, high quality food made specific for your discus. That's what I would do. Keep it simple. You know that food is right. You know that it has everything in it that the fish needs. Now, what does discus need? What do they need? When they're young, they need tons and tons of protein because that's what they're using to grow. And so this is why a lot of people mix up things like beef heart and shrimp, and they put vitamins and things like that into the food, and they mix it all up and they make a food for the fish. It's great. I mean, you can look it up online and get recipes. It's not hard to find. Take you about 10 seconds to find it. You can gather up the materials, put it all in a mixing bowl and mix. It's fun. Okay. If that's what you're into, that's great. They need a lot of protein. And so when you're doing that, when you're mixing all this stuff up, it's a great way to really give them tons of protein to help them grow. It's almost like making a protein shake for your fish. Here's the thing. This is another thing that Hans and I talked about. When you feed these foods that are prepared by you, you're feeding them raw meat, raw beef heart, raw shrimp, raw fish. You're throwing all of this into the tank and it's going to break up and the fish aren't going to get every single morsel of it. And so it can contaminate your water faster than some of the prepared foods. So just know that going in. If you're trying to keep this simple and you want to try to avoid some of the work involved with raising these fish, then you might want to just go ahead and stick with the manufactured flakes and pellets. And I would just say keep it even more simple than that and order the food that is made specifically for discus. There is even a food out there that is endorsed by Discus Hans. Look it up. It's not hard to find. That is a great food. That flake is made with the same exact ingredients as the food that Hans makes. Hans makes his own food for his fish at the shop. He mixes it all up and he actually sells this food too. It's a frozen food that's made from everything I keep saying, beef heart, shrimp, blah, 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 and vitamins. He mixes it all up in this gigantic commercial grade mixer and he sells it. But the flakes are made from that exact same recipe. So it's really good stuff. We fed it to Discus in our shop and our own Discus for a while, and it worked extremely well. And every time we got it in the store, it just flew off the shelf because it had Hans's name on it. And I mean, people trust him. They know that he knows what he's talking about when it comes to Discus. So that keeps things much more simple than trying to go out there and mix something for yourself. Just buy the flakes, buy the pellets. The fish will love them and they'll be good to go. Okay, so I have been running my mouth a lot. This is something I'm guilty of. I do it all the time. I know that. I run my mouth too much and I end up going way too long, and I don't want to make this episode way too long. So I tell you what I'm going to do today. I'm going to skip the section on breeding these fish. Maybe we'll pick it up again in a future episode. If you really want to hear me talk about breeding discus, I am well versed in it. We can certainly have a good conversation about it. Send me an email, tanktalkfeedback@gmail.com. If you'd like an episode all about breeding discus, we can certainly do that. I just don't think it's fair to do it today because we've already been going for a while and I don't want to blast through it really quick. I mean, it's a pretty big deal to breed these fish, and I don't want to rush it because I don't think that would be fair. If you're tuning in because you want to know how to breed discus, I don't want to go through the whole thing in 5 minutes. So here's what you do. First of all, go to my YouTube channel and find my video. It's KGTropicals, youtube.com/KGTropicals. Find my video with Hans talking about breeding these fish. You'll be looking at two of the most gorgeous discus you've ever seen in your life, and you will hear me get in depth with Hans about how to breed these fish. If you just can't get enough and you want to hear that or see that, then definitely check that out. And again, if you want a podcast episode all about it, shoot me an email at tanktalkfeedback@gmail.com. And that's something that I'll consider maybe even for next week. Who knows? But I would like to get your feedback on that first. But before we end this, we definitely need to talk about two more quick things. One is tank mates, and the other is what to look for when you go to buy your first discus. Tank mates, it's very simple, folks. Discus are very gentle, docile, easygoing, laid-back fish. Now, you will hear stories about a mean discus now and then. Of course you will. They're out there. But for the most part, the vast majority of discus are going to be very easygoing, very laid back, and not going to be beating up any other fish. They might get a little bit of an attitude if they pair off and want to breed, but for the most part, you're not going to have any issues with these fish hurting other fish in your tank. What you need to watch out for is the other fish hurting your discus. That's the biggest thing that you need to watch for. So when you select tank mates for your discus, make sure they are community type fish that are of the non-aggressive variety so that they don't even put a speck on your discus. I would stick to things like tetras. Not all of them. There's some tetras that can be nasty. There's some barbs that can be nasty that you might want to stay away from. But the two fish out there that are the most common that I see with discus are cardinal tetras, which I happen to love. And then talking about other cichlids here, German blue rams. I see all the time. Actually, any ram variety. Rams are a great fish to keep with discus because they have about the same temperament as discus. They're just very, very small. And cardinal tetras are perfect for discus because they're small. They're not going to hurt your discus. They're going to add some movement to the tank. They're beautiful with discus. So a lot of your big discus tanks out there, that's what you're going to find is that if they have anything in there other than discus, you'll see cardinal tetras and German blue rams. That's going to be your most common. But community fish, it's best to keep with them. Make sure they are not aggressive. Don't start mixing discus with African cichlids and Oscars and Jack Dempseys and things like that. Stay away from that. If you have to keep them with other cichlids, just make sure it's rams, and then there won't be a huge issue. Now, there is a big debate, and this is one that I know where I stand on it, but a lot of people would argue with me on this, and that's fine. And that is angels. A lot of people want to mix angels and discus. And there are people that say it's okay, and there's other people that say, no way, you can't do it. In my experience, it has worked. It's been fine. I've had discus mixed with angels. They come from the same river. If they were, if you were to go all the way back to where they originated from, they both come from the Amazon. They live together in nature. Why can't they live together in the aquarium? They do live together in the aquarium. However, angels can get extremely nasty if they pair off and they want to breed. And so there is a risk involved putting angels with discus, but I've done it multiple times and it's been fine. If you're one of these people that likes taking no risk whatsoever, don't put angels with discus. But if you're a little bit on edge like me, go ahead and throw them in there and they should be fine. Like I said, I've done it multiple times and never had any problems. The last thing I want to talk about is you're buying your discus for the first time. There's a lot of ways of looking at this, folks. And if you talk to some of those hardcore people out there, the discus people out there, they're all going to tell you, you really need to do your research on where to buy them before you do it. Don't just run down to your local pet store and buy a discus. Find out where that discus came from. Because like I said before, and I think pretty much any, real discus enthusiast would tell you the same thing, where they came from is going to have a lot to do with how difficult that fish is to take care of. So you need to know where they come from. If your pet store says, I don't know, we just get them from the blah, blah, then you might not want to buy your discus from there. Instead, I would maybe go online and order them from one of the reputable companies out there online. Of course, I'm going to tell you to go to my friend Discus Hans's website. I'm completely drawing a blank right now, having a brain fart moment of exactly what his website is, but I think it is discusfishstore.com, but just search Discus Hans, Hans, and it'll pop up right there, first listing. I would recommend his discus to anyone, and I've never heard anyone ever tell me they had, I can't stand Hans's discus. They're terrible. The only people that would tell you that are actual breeders of fish that compete with him. They're the only ones that would tell you that Hans's fish aren't any good. Everyone that I talk to talks about how they're the best out there. Now, please understand, this is not an episode of this podcast that is sponsored by Hans or anything like that. I haven't talked to Hans in like 3 months, so believe me, he doesn't even know I'm making this, but I feel like he deserves me telling you that he is where you should go if you want to get some of these fish, and you can order them online. He will send them directly to your door. I could not recommend him more. There are plenty of others out there. If maybe you live on the West Coast and you feel funny about ordering from all the way on the opposite side of the country, that's fine. Do your research, read reviews, look at these companies before you order your fish from them. And if you're going to get them from your local pet store, find out where they come from. Hans doesn't only sell to you, the consumer. He ships out hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of fish every single week to pet stores all over the country. He's the only distributor of Stenker discus here in the States. So your local pet store might be selling Hans's fish. So you need to find that out before you do it. And then also take into account size. The larger the fish are, the more you're going to spend, but understand that your life is going to be much easier if you do it that way. So smaller fish, cheaper, harder to keep. Larger fish, much more expensive, but a little easier on your life and a little less risky. So I hope this has helped you to understand a little bit more about this fish. I know I talk fast and I go all over the place and I'm kind of manic down here, but I have a good time with this and I can get a little animated from time to time. But I hope that I've helped you to understand a little bit more about this fish and how you really should not be scared of this fish. I mean, they're expensive. That's all you should be scared of. As far as keeping them, though, they're not hard. They have adapted well, and they will do well in the aquarium. Just know what you're doing before you go out and buy them. So I hope you've enjoyed this. If you are a fan of John's World, stick around because I'm going to bring that right to you. If you're not, if you want to check out, thank you so much for listening to this, and I look forward to talking to you next week. But for those that enjoy John's World, let's get to it.
John's World!
All right, for John's World today, we are going to talk about depression. We're going to talk about seasonal depression because that's what I have going on here right now. I don't know about you folks. I know some people listening to this are probably listening in colder climates, but I hate winter. I absolutely hate it. I'd like your feedback on this because I don't think I'm the only person out there. I hate winter. I hate snow. I hate what it does to traffic. I hate that it's dark when I wake up in the morning and it's dark when I get home. I hate it. Everything about it. I can't stand it. And you know, this winter, being that everything that has happened with us, with shutting the shop down and moving in the middle of winter, moving our shop to the house and everything that's going on with Lisa's son in the Marine Corps, and he's shipping out to California, and all of these, everything's been going on this winter, the worst winter ever, and I just hate it. Not only do I already hate winter, but I really hate this one. I mean, I don't like to use the hate word. I try to teach the kids how strong that word is and we shouldn't use it, but I don't have a problem telling you I hate winter. I hate it with every part of my being. And finally, it seems like we're starting to see an end to it. I'm so excited. They're playing baseball down in Florida. The sun is coming out. We just had daylight savings time, and I was outside yesterday wearing shorts. It's finally starting to turn, and I'm so excited about that. Last week, what are we? We're buried in snow. The kids are out of school. I can't even get out of my driveway because I live kind of on a hill, and I couldn't get up it because it was full of ice. Ugh, I'm so sick of it. And I cannot wait for the weather to actually break. Now, I'm looking at the forecast, and it's telling me here in Virginia that we're supposed to be in the 50s and 60s for the next 2 weeks. I'm not going to get my hopes up. I know here on the East Coast, we've gotten slammed by major storms in March, including last year. So we can't get too excited yet. I know we're not completely out of the woods, but it seems to me like we're finally starting to turn the corner, and I can't wait. I'm a completely different human being in the spring, summer, and fall than I am in the winter. I mean, seasonal depression, it's a real thing for me. I can't stand it. I'm not a morning person to begin with, but when I get up every morning at 6:30 to send the kids off to school and it's pitch black dark and they're walking out to the bus stop in the pitch black, it makes me want to hurt somebody. But when it's, later in the spring and summer and fall, when it's still light, it gets light out at like 6 a.m. and it's beautiful. It's easier to get out of bed and the kids don't have to walk to the bus stop in the dark. So much easier. And then not to mention in the middle of winter, when you come home from work and it's dark, you never even get to see daylight. I'm so done with it. I cannot express in words how done with winter I am. Usually I'm okay with winter. I can tolerate it until Christmas. After Christmas, I'm done. It's got to be over. I don't know why I live here. I really don't. I don't know why I live in Virginia. This is where I grew up. I've never lived anywhere else. But boy, I sure would love to move down to even southern Florida, tolerate the threat of hurricanes and stuff like that. I'd rather be there. I'd rather it be 110 degrees with 110% humidity. I'd rather have that than to be up here in the wintertime. I hate it, and I'm just done with it. And now, I want to mention one more thing because I touched on it briefly. I don't know how many of my listeners are Nats fans, but I'm really excited about baseball coming back. Really excited. The Nats are playing good in spring ball too. So I'm excited. And, I feel like Washington, D.C. might have themselves a parade coming up here. Not too distant future. We'll see how long things go, but I'm going to tell you what. I'm excited to be a Nats fan right now. I'm starting to get a little frustrating being a Wizards fan, but I'm a big Nats fan. So excited. We're going to go to a few games this year. Can't wait for that. But I just wanted to rant a little bit about my hatred of winter. I'm telling you, I'm just sick of it. I want it to be over, and I'll be a happy man when it is. I don't like wearing pants. That sounded weird. I don't like wearing long pants. I like wearing shorts, and wintertime, I can't wear shorts, and I hate it. I wear pants, though. You know what I mean? I just don't like wearing long pants. So, okay, that's it. That's enough. Thank you all so much for sticking around. I hope you enjoy John's World. I have fun just kind of going off a little bit. Maybe next week we can talk about the fact that I'm pretty sure it's next week that Arrow and the Flash are going to come back. So, got a lot of feedback from people from my little talk about the Flash and Arrow on the last episode. Got a lot of feedback from that, so maybe next week, since it'll be coming back, we'll go back to that and have some fun with that. I can talk me some Arrow and the Flash, and they're even coming out with a Supergirl show. Did you hear about that? So I'm not a Supergirl fan, but I'll watch the show because it's being made by the same company that makes Arrow and the Flash. So, all right, thank you all so much for listening. I look forward to talking to you again next week.